Quotations from myself, segment 22. Quotation number 230. Nostalgia. I used to be articulate, surrounded by friends, but here I am an illiterate and lonely immigrant. Nostalgia is a longing for a place, real or imaginary, where one supposedly has been accepted in the past and surely would be welcome again the way one is, as much of course as it is possible for human beings to accept each other. It is a place where one presumably would not be rejected and despised, especially not for what he actually is, but for what he is only in the eyes of the prejudiced and often hostile beholders. For an immigrant, nostalgia also serves as a weapon to fight off the indignities and humiliation inflicted upon him by the new and unfriendly environment. The moment an immigrant arrives in a new country, he immediately, as if by magic, loses his individuality. Not in a true sense, of course, but only as far as his native hosts are concerned, and is labeled by generic name of the country he came from. He became the Russian, the Greek, the Italian, etc. Everything he does or says from now on is looked upon as expression of characteristic traits allegedly peculiar to the people from a country of his origin. But since the inhabitants of the host country usually have very little knowledge of the immigrant countries of origin, those characteristic traits are naturally no more than hodgepodge of stereotypes, old wives' tales, and pure ignorance, with a good measure of prejudice and outright hostility. At the same time, these foreign lands the Jew immigrant came from are habitually graded as good, usually the motherland of original settlers, by now the dominant majority, bad, more likely than not a point of departure of the recent arrivals, and anything in between, using in these gradations the reasons which are no more valid than those employed to define national character of their present or former inhabitants. Consequently, the immigrants are judged and treated according to the status arbitrarily given to their country of origin, and if this country is labeled as bad, they are going to be treated badly, no matter what they are personally are. Such immigrants, therefore, have only one way to improve the situation. They have to improve the image of their mother country in the eyes of their host. To that purpose, they embark on creating their own, new and positive myths about the old country to confront the negative one created by the others. This new myth, understandably, tends to idealize and embellish the country of their origin, and subsequently they begin to believe this myth themselves, regardless of the reaction of the other toward it. After the immigrants have created this image of the lost paradise, they would naturally develop the longing nostalgia for such a beautiful and bountiful land they were so foolish to abandon. The second and subsequent generations born in a new country believe in this myth even more, having no real experience of the old country at all. Suffices to say, it is next to impossible to persuade the host to accept the new and positive image of immigrant country of origin. For whatever reasons, they feel more comfortable with the old than the negative one. But if this new and positive image doesn't change the way they are viewed and treated by others, the immigrants, especially their children, are getting rid at least of the inferiority complex, which in itself constitutes a very important psychological gain. Yet, even those who have originally come from supposedly good countries are practicing the useful art of nostalgia, though for entirely different reasons. Having usually obtained a vastly superior to that of the immigrants from the bad country position in a new country, mostly due to the positive myths about their mother country, they thereafter have vested interest in maintaining and upgrading it in order to convince both others and themselves that their position of privilege and dominance is justified and therefore has to be perpetuated. Number 231. Those internal monologues and dialogues that are so clear, eloquent, clever, and persuasive, and which each of us continuously carried on while remaining externally silent, is the stuff the art is made of. And the true artist is the one who first has the courage, and second, the talent to say publicly what each of us feels and thinks privately, but either won't dare to say it loud or has no ability to do so in a way that could be understood by others, or most likely both. Thus, the primary task of art is to translate the silent cry of a soul in the audible speech of public discourse, giving in the process at once the unique, in common voice to the voiceless many. Number 232. The truth shall make you free, said Jesus. But what he forgot or deliberately have chosen not to mention is that it also make you very disillusioned and extremely depressed. Number 233. Most of one's life is spent in fear. Fear of being harmed, fear of abandonment and rejection, fear of losing one's possession or position, or of not even getting either, fear of being thought of as unattractive or even ugly, ridiculous, silly, fear of not being loved and of not deserving to be loved, or worse, of being hated, and ultimately fear of death. So it is not surprising then that being such an all-pervasive human emotion, fear is also one of the major forces governing human behavior. Though fear certainly helps us to survive physically, spiritually it inevitably destroys us. For in the realm of social and personal interaction, where most of our lives are spent, fear, more often than not, leads to betrayal. Again and again, through our lives, we find ourselves in that unfortunate situation, most of the time not of our own doing, when in order to protect ourselves from a real or imagined threat, we have to, or so it seems to us, betray others. People we go to school with, co-workers, acquaintances, friends, relatives, our spouses, etc. All who had the misfortune to be on the losing side of that most common and the most predictable of human choices. It is either me or he, she, them, etc. And of course, in making these choices, we are continually betraying not just people, but also our principles, ideas, morals, and ultimately our essential selves, or what we believe it to be. Thus, one's life is spent not only in fear, but also in betrayal, engendered by fear, in betraying others and in turn is being betrayed by them too. Yet though people are constantly betraying each other, they cannot do without each other either. And this combination of antagonism and mutual dependency is what the human relations are all about. Number 234. There is a point in everyone's life when usually after a seemingly endless period of persistent and nagging psychological discomfort, bordering often on depression, one suddenly, almost as if by revelation, becomes aware, painfully and unmistakably, of one's profound unhappiness. For this time is quite unlike the many but temporary unhappinesses each one of us experience occasionally through life. When the immediate cause of this or that particular unhappiness is either known or at least seems to be known, and therefore the suitable remedy can be found to alleviate it. But such is the nature of profound unhappiness that no real or even imagined reason for it is apparent to us, since none of the old and tried causes of remedy seems to be applicable anymore. One just experiences the all-pervasive feeling of helplessness and desperation without a name and a cause, the feeling that stubbornly refuses to free us from its soul-stifling grip. Yet to continue living, we have to find the cause, for if we don't, this profound unhappiness won't go away by itself. It will only get progressively worse until it destroys our life completely. Having been conditioned by our life experience to derive the pleasure from satisfaction of desire to possess, to use, or to do, we quite naturally tend to look for the cause of our profound unhappiness in the absence of such thing or some actions, believing that as soon as we find them, everything will become normal again. And so one embarks on some new, untried before activities, and also on a long search for some new, not yet experienced things to possess, to use, hoping that they will help one to regain at least previous, however fragile, contentment, if not the lost happiness. But since we know neither what exactly what you're looking for, nor where and how to look for it, the search of necessity lacks any outward plan or internal logic. It simply becomes a perpetual exercise in trial and error, a game of chance, a lottery. There will be, of course, as in any lottery, a few lucky winners, but the majority, as always, will spend the rest of their lives constantly losing, never getting happy or content, never finding the real reason for their unhappiness, and yet never losing hope that the next time theirs might be the lucky draw. And who knows, perhaps that's the best one can hope for. Number 235. And yet another line dividing people. On one side of it are those who are always getting what they want today. On the other, those who also always are told to wait till tomorrow. Number 236. What can be said in just few words should not be said in many. The brevity has some rewards which are as good as any.